The picture history of Jewish civilization. The land of Israel was poor. It was not a magnificent state like the great civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Its kings were neither gods nor their representatives. Its priests did not rule vast estates, and its officials and men of power did not accumulate untold wealth. Neither huge buildings, splendid tombs, nor enduring monuments were erected there. The Israelite religion preached simplicity and austerity. The Hebrew prophets scorned riches and luxury and did not bow their heads before rulers. They mocked royal palaces and placed an uncompromising mortality above everything. They rose up against the social wealth which the man of power accumulated and spoke out to demand justice for the ranch as a primal religious duty. The spirit of Israel was expressed not in artistic monuments, crafts, political power, or warfare, but in matters of the mind. The Hebrew prophets established ethical foundations for human civilization. It was Zechariah who said, "Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts." Biblical Judaism contributed to mankind consisted of the belief in a single God. It was expressed in the following ways: mortal order of the Hebrew prophets, the system of biblical historiography, the guide to wise living in the books of Proverbs, Ecclesiasticus, and in the cry of men stricken by adversity in the book of Job. The ancient Jews or Israelites made a major contribution to the narrative art which achieved supreme expression. All right, so we have the picture history of the Jewish civilization. 1971, as you can see, this book has a lot of wear and tear in it. I bought it used, but it gives you historical information with what that guy just said, that Jewish scholar just said. So we're gonna go to page 95, and then we see under the Khazars. In this period of glory for the anonymous Jewish community in Babylonia, the religion of the Jews and their way of life attracted many persons. Numerous tribes in the Arabian Peninsula and in the various lands of the Near and Middle East adopted Judaism. The most famous of these were the Khazars. The land of the Khazars in the southern Russia extended from the Caspian Sea to the Black Sea, as far as the Crimea. The Khazars were a semi-nomadic pagan tribe whose chief was Kagan. At the beginning of the 8th century, the Khazars became very strong by virtue of their domination of the trade route between the Byzantine Empire and the Far East. For this reason, both the Byzantine emperors and the Baghdad Caliph were interested in cultivating the Khazars, and bringing them under their influence by winning them over to their religion. So basically, they were pagans on their last legs who converted to Judaism in the 8th century. All right. Adoption to a new world of values. The Renaissance is a rather imprecise term to designate the period of the European history when the Middle Ages ended and modern times began. It extended roughly between the 13th and 16th centuries, when the modern art, thought, literature, science, and criticism had their beginnings. The Renaissance means new birth, where it was a period in European history filled with hope and promise. So basically, if it's a new birth, which means it's a new era, a new society of whitewashing, literature, books, and painting over our old culture. I mean, that's basically in a nutshell. You got to read in between the lines what they're telling you. So basically, they're saying that the Renaissance promoted the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. Why would you have to rediscover something that's already in existence? Which means you have to change things up. You have a new point of view. Let me make this person look like myself instead of what his original inception was. There you go. So basically, they changed and altered history, changed the painting, Because like I said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Most people do not read. In Jewish history, however, it was in many aspects a period of gloom, punctuated by explosions in England, France, and Spain, and massacres in Germany, people of color. Conditions in Italy were somewhat better, but the Jews were expelled from the southern Italy by the Spaniards in 1492 through 1541, while in the northern part of the peninsula, the religious reaction among the Catholics after the Reformation led to the introduction of the ghettos. Now, think about America. Who do you associate the ghettos with? The Jews and the blacks. They're the same people. Well, the Negro and the Jew are the same people. Okay. And all of the oppressive institutions which the term evokes. So the Reformation led to the introduction of the ghettos. Interesting. And ghettos were just in America? No, they were overseas as well. Isn't that kind of telling that the ghettos were created for the Negroes because the Negro is the Jew? Okay? Why you see all these ghettos around here and redlining in these cities? Because these are the Jews. In the new modern term, the world doesn't recognize them as a people. But they are, a lot of them are, what you would say have Jewish blood or Shemitic blood. So I'm going to be reading the world religions from ancient history to the present, the origins of Christianity. Both Jesus himself and a small band of disciples who followed him during his earthly ministry in Galilee and Judea were all Jews by race and religion. That's why I highlighted all Jews by race, okay? Because being a Jew is not a religion. It's actually a seed line. And the scholars even know this. That's why in the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary it says, a Jew originally is denoted one being in the tribe of Judah, or to the two tribes of the southern kingdom, 2 Kings 16:6, 25 and 25. But later its meaning was extended and was applied to any one of the Hebrew or Eber Shemitic race who returned from captivity. As most of the exiles came from Judah, as they were the main historical representatives of ancient Israel. And the term Jew came finally to comprehend all the Hebrew race throughout the diaspora. With that being said, the book New Orleans, Race and Americanization, this was recorded. So this is not religion. This is actually historical facts that you had a slave coast from the transatlantic slave trade. There wasn't millions upon millions of slaves that came from Africa. That is a narrative, okay? So we know from history, in the 1700s, because you got the free black Scots that came here and established the 13 colonies here in the Americas. And then you had the Aboriginal Negroes that were already here. A lot of them died out because of the diseases, smallpox, and mainly the diseases that the Europeans, the white and blacks, brought over here to the Americas. So, it's crazy. Next time you see a so-called black person, you might be walking next to a ancient Jew of the Bible that these religious churches, that say they claim to follow God and love his people, but they don't even know who his people are. And they're over there giving their money away to a fake state of Israel that's not a people, but are converts. And that's where a lot of our tax money is going to help people, to help a false state of Israel. Okay? Think about it.
Because some people are going to find it offensive. Why? Doesn't recognize Israel. It was drawn in 1709.
Yeah.
There was no Israel.
Right.
Israel wouldn't happen for another 250 years.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with the map?
Some people are going to find it offensive.
Why?
It doesn't recognize Israel.
Take lunch, would you?
Was Christopher Columbus black or Negro? Well, what's the old saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, we know that Mr. Columbus was born October 31st, 1451, Genoa, Italy. And he died May 20th, 1506. Okay. Now back to the book, The Missing Link, Part 4, the Negro question. We know the so-called blacks were in rulership in Europe. So we're going to go to Mr. Benjamin Franklin's essay in 1751. Subject, why increase the sons of Africa in America? All Africa is tawny, black. Asia chiefly tawny, black. America exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. In Europe, the Spaniards, French, Italians, Russian, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy black complexion. So are the Germans also. And Mr. Lee Cummins has a list, okay? So the question is, was Christopher Columbus really a so-called white man? And I doubt it. I mean, it's just my opinion. I'm theorizing, but if they lied about the world maps, who the real Jews were, then their word is not credible. The history is just full of lies and assumptions and narratives. You know what I'm saying? So, it's very deep. I have these ideas that pop in my head, and I run with it and I try to search out the matter. And it's just disgusting, all these lies that, we've been taught, in society. We've been brainwashed, and looking further onto the matter, these old letters and essay, and it starts to make sense. And even the paintings, it's just like you can look at them and see that it don't look right. It don't look authentic. And you can't designate color to one continent. See, that's what a lot of these so-called white folks do. They think just because you're black or African American or African, whatever you want to call yourself, that your history is strictly from this one region. Even our own people sit there and believe that lie. But we've been everywhere. And yet, some of our own, and even the whites, they want to cling on or hang on to the slave narrative. Not everyone was in slavery. Some people were eventually enslaved, but point in case, Mr. John Baptiste Point du Seville, okay, Chicago founder, 1750 through 1818. I believe he found Chicago, the settlement, in 1799. We got to remember, Mr. Benjamin Franklin's essay came out in 1751 that the Spaniards, French, Italians, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call swarthy or black. So those were nations, black nations. Okay. So Mr. Benjamin Franklin's letter, Swarthy Germans. Why increase the sons of Africa in America? Why should the Palestine Moors, which just means Negro, Germans be suffered to swarm into our settlements? Didn't Mr. John Baptiste found the settlement of Chicago? They will never adopt our customs any more than they can adopt our complexion. So with that said, people with melanin or hue can produce different shades of color, light brown, dark, boxwood, etc. But people with no melanin or white skin, they cannot produce color, because it is a mutation and this is scientific fact. It's not racism. It's just scientific study that two white people cannot produce people of color. Okay? It's a recessive gene. It's not a dominant gene. Timeline Extermination of Blacks in Europe. This timeline is extremely critical to the research in this book because it describes the old world order in the days of Benjamin Franklin, Boyd Dawkins, and Albert Churchward. This timeline also teaches us that the English were not absolute rulers of the earth in 1879. We have also established that by 1912, the black presence in Europe had been practically exterminated. This would mean that the English did not begin to rule the world until 1945, until after World War II, when the rebels in America defeated the British Crown. That did not make them sole rulers of the earth. They simply won their independence from England. It took them from 1776 to 1945 to establish themselves one of the major world powers along with Russia. I would like to comment on the concept of a new world order and why it is important to get a handle on this phase. The first time I heard the phrase, the new world order, I heard it on television from President Bush Sr. I thought he was referring to the European Union and the mysteries associated with them, but I have since come to understand that he was speaking to another audience. Bush Sr. was talking to the kings, queens, and dictators on this planet. Even though it is transmitted on television, he was not talking to the common man. Under the old world order, the blacks ruled Europe, Asia, Africa, and the entire earth. I mean, pictures worth 1,000 words. They're finding all these old pictures from the Russian icons. In the book that I have, The Jewish Civilization, the Jews or Jewish were people of color, Shemitic. Okay. After the white nations took the dominion on the earth, they announced to the rest of the nations that there was a new sheriff in town, the white race. This is further emphasized with the symbolism of the eagle. When the black Habsburgs ruled the earth, one of their symbols was a two-headed black eagle. The moment the whites took over the dominion in Europe, their symbol for white rulership became the white eagle. Now you see a lot of these dumb neo-Nazis, they don't know their own history either. So they have the two-headed black eagle, which represents black rulership. But a lot of them don't like black people. I mean, because they don't even know their own history either. So they're lost in the sauce as well. It's pretty crazy. Upside down world. Okay. How far does a lie go? A lie can stretch all across the world. When it comes to lying about historical truths, who the people are, who you are, paintings have been whitewashed, and they've changed the maps. And they've admitted this. I mean, watch the show West Wing. It'll tell you.
Hi, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry to be late.
not a problem.
I'm CJ Craig.
Of course you are. I'm Dr. John Fallow. This is Dr. Cynthia Sales and Professor Donald Huke.
Hugh.
Huke.
Okay, and you are the Organization of Cartographers for Social Equality.
Well, we're from the OCSE. We have many members.
How many?
4,300 dues-paid members.
What are the dues?
$20 a year for the newsletter.
Let's start.
Wait, I want to see this.
This is Josh Lyman.
Indeed you are.
Josh, this is Dr. Fallow, and
Hi.
who's Merry Men.
Yes.
Should we begin?
Yes. Plain and simple, we'd like President Bartlett to aggressively support legislation that would make it mandatory for every public school in America to teach geography using the Peters projection map instead of the traditional Mercator.
Give me $200 and it's done.
Really?
No. Why are we changing maps?
Because, CJ, the Mercator projection has fostered European imperialist attitudes for centuries and created an ethnic bias against the Third World.
Really?
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
Yes?
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes?
Here we have Europe drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is. Nothing's where you think it is.
Doesn't recognize Israel. It was drawn in 1709.
Yeah.
There was no Israel.
Right.
Israel wouldn't happen for another 250 years.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with the map?
Some people are going to find it offensive.
Why?
It doesn't recognize Israel.
Where is it?
I'm glad you asked. The Peters projection.
It has fidelity of axis.
Fidelity of position.
East-west lines are parallel and intersect north-south axes at right angles.
What the hell is that?
It's where you've been living this whole time. Should we continue?
Uh-huh.
So, you're probably wondering what all of this has to do with social equality.
No, I'm wondering where France really is.
Guys, we want to thank you very much for coming in.
Hang on, we're gonna finish this.
Okay.
What do maps have to do with social equality, you ask?
She asked.
Salvatore Natoli of the National Council for Social Studies argues, in our society, we unconsciously equate size with importance and even power.
Like the society, power is based on your color, the color of your skin, okay? Because everything over here is based on race, okay? The ruling class mentality or the white supremacy, okay? Why you think they had to change all the images from history? They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Most people don't like to read, so a lot of our minds, a lot of information is processed through the imagery that we see, the movies. So wouldn't it make sense if you want to dumb down or miseducate someone or a slave, all the rulers, all the people of power are so-called white? That's how you control a people. You mess up their minds. You miseducate them, okay? And upon that division, then you have the color codes. You know, when your culture is lost, you associate it with your color of your skin. And now you bicker and you fight, and it's a constant struggle between black and white. I mean, look at America. You have the ruling class, and then you have the bottom class who just trying to survive and fight for what they call equality, which doesn't exist. There's always going to be a head, and there's always going to be a tail of society. In Europe, the so-called whites were the tail. They were in servitude under the so-called blacks. And they won't allow this type of information on the mainstream because it would mess up the psyche of a lot of so-called whites' mind. A lot of them have this superiority complex issue. Not all of them, but at least the ones that you see that are always claiming to, know everything or have a racist ideology about them.
I'm going to check in on Tubman.
Go.
These guys find Brigadoon on that map. You'll call me, right?
Probably not.
Okay.
When third world countries are misrepresented, they're likely to be valued less. When Mercator maps exaggerate the importance of Western civilization, when the top of the map is given to the Northern Hemisphere and the bottom is given to the Southern, then people will tend to adopt top and bottom attitudes.
But wait, where else could you put the northern hemisphere but on the top?
On the bottom.
How?
Like this.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
Why not?
Because it's freaking me out.
So upon closing out, I found this article on the Cambridge, UK. They're pretty credible. It says Christopher Columbus was black. New research done by the University of Cambridge proves conclusively that Christopher Columbus was black. DNA analysis of the remains of Christopher Columbus done by a forensic scientist at the University of Cambridge proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the famed navigator was of African descent. A 500-year mystery has been solved, said Willington Manelli, if I'm pronouncing that right, the head of the Cambridge research team. Even though Columbus was born in Genoa and spoke and wrote in Spanish most of his life, see, that's what I was talking about earlier. Black is not defined by one continent. People of color were everywhere. Columbus was 100% African. African is a continent, okay? What tribe, what phenotype was he? We believe he was from the West Coast, probably from what is now Cameroon. No way, said Carlo Muccini of Bayonne, New Jersey. Columbus is a full-blooded Italian American. And this person, he's just going off of his continent or his country. You know, he sailed here with his friends Nina and Pinta and discovered Hoboken. That's the way it went down. He's not black. This is our day. Sorry, Carlito or Carlo. It's the truth. Some of the remains of Christopher Columbus were found in Seville, Cathedral in Spain, and some bones were buried in Sante de Monaco Cathedral in Dominican Republic. And all of the bones and remains from both locations have been checked and rechecked. He's black. Columbus died in 1506. Now, in the book 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, it talks about even when the so-called blacks ruled Europe. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. You know, number 100 in the 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. Since 1460 AD or earlier, the Negroes of Seville, Spain had been wearing in the religious procession on the Feast of Corpus Christi a white robe and hood strikingly like that used by the Ku Klux Klan, which originated 428 years later. Okay. Speaking of the parade of the Negro Brotherhood in Seville, Spain in 1926, Arthur Kronberg, the curator of the Carnegie Library, if I'm pronouncing that right, West 135th Street, New York City, says, it was the only human to wish to examine the garments of the Brotherhood of the Negroes after observing the similarity to the white robes and cowls used by the Ku Klux Klan of our country. To all the appearances of the American organizations copied the dress of all those believers in Christ. Not even in garments, it seems, is the American order original. They are evidently copied faithfully from a very scarce brotherhood whose devotion won them the love and gratitude of the Spanish people, from the king to the peasant, pontiff to believer. Opportunity MAGA, page 164, June 1927, New York. So a lot of these Ku Klux Klan members, they don't know, well, they know, some of them probably know where they get their white hoods from. The Negro started wearing it first. Today, the descendants of the Spanish Negroes are quite bleached from mixing with their white neighbors, that makes sense. But the old Negro tradition remains. The Negro Church of Nuestra Senora de Los Angeles in Brero, Carmona, if I'm pronouncing that right, is still maintained by them. priests guide the others, and Seville informed me that the garb is exactly like that of centuries ago. For earlier information on these Negros, as they are called in Seville, see Zugna Annals de Sevilla, published in Madrid in 1677. Later, the Negroes rose to a position of prominence and had a court, after whom one of the streets is still named. If the originators of the Ku Klux Klan did not copy the garb of these Negroes, then the coincidence is really amazing. You see that? Do you see the parallels of everything in our world that we was taught and meant to believe? Started out black, so-called. Now, when you come to America, you lose your culture and you lose your heritage. So in the universal term, it's black. You notice when you go to other countries and you tell someone they're black and they're like, no, I'm not black, I'm Puerto Rican, because those people have a culture. Remember, black is not a race. Black is just a color. Okay? So, in 1537, the widow of his son, Diego, was allowed to take the bones of both her husband and his father to Dominican Republic for burial at the Cathedral of Santo Domingo. Diego was also so-called black. Not all African Americans were pleased to learn about Columbus's ethnic identity. What? Columbo was a thug, a punk. He sailed out here and slaughtered the Indians, said Fred Johnson of Harlem. I think the whole thing is bogus, trying to pin a crime on blacks again. This is BS. And then President Obama at the time said, but President Obama heard the news over the weekend and was proud to know that one of the greatest sailors and navigators of all time was so-called black. I'm ordering all statues and monuments to Christopher Columbus to be taken down and redone. We want his likeness to be accurate. So why did it take all this time to find out that Christopher Columbus was so-called black? In that book that I have, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, J.A. Rogers knows that Beethoven, Shakespeare, during those time periods were people of color, which you would call so-called black, because the image is worth 1,000 words. Images are powerful. So it's just like in today's time, we're finding out that all these historical figures were so-called black. They're going to have to do a serious reformation in the schools. And that's going to mess up the psyches of some of these racist ass white folks who call us niggers and everything else because they do not like so-called people of color. That is, for our culture, we call it anti-Semitism. And their spirit shows when they call you a nigger and everything else. Okay? So, let me see. Mayor Bloomberg in New York said that the big Italian American parade down Fifth Avenue will be changed to African American parade in honor of Christopher Columbus. Tony Sinelli of Brooklyn said, "This ain't right. This is the only Italian day we get, and they take it away from us. We get no respect. Next thing you know, they'll be telling us that the Chinese invented pasta." Oh, man, I tell you. It reminds me of the episode of The Simpsons. It starts with us, and in the last days, they said knowledge shall be increased. And we're not talking about supercomputers. We're talking about the people. When the people wake up from their dormant state of minds and wake up from all the nonsense. Upon closing out, I like to say that research, read books, educate yourself. Isaiah 4:6 says, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. We live in the age of information. If you want to choose to be blind, go ahead. People say they want to go back to how things were. I'm like, so you want to go back to being last in a society, being lied to the most? No. But peace and shalom.